work with sewer lines, storm drain lines, cammering, unclogging, all those types of services they provide. So they approached us several months ago, and asked if we would be willing to provide some assistance on some property they had purchased up in our EDA, or Economic Development Area, up by Eastgate. Property's shown right there. It's just, you can see the road accessing the old bird plant there. This is the property just north of the Church Bowery and Detention Basin right there on North Fairfield Road. Their proposal is to build a fairly large structure up there to house some of their equipment, some of their trucks. And then as they got into the site details, they found that the cost of some of that site work was a little bit unexpected, because as a lot of those properties up in Eastgate have, there were some topography issues they had to deal with that were a little bit more than what they bargained for. So they asked if the city would be willing to help out a little bit on some economic development funding for this particular project. As staff looked at it, it did determine that there was an opportunity to provide some assistance. We made some findings that based on the job creation and some of those constraints that we talked about and the investment that the company was going to do in that area, that we would be willing to recommend a 50% increment. So that's 50% of the tax increment that that site generates, just the site itself. That would be consistent with some of the non-aerospace type employers and jobs that we've approved in some of the other agreements. So with that, we are recommending that you adopt RDA Resolution 2402. That would be for this, again, reimbursement agreement for tax increment financing up to 50% of their tax increment generated by the site. There is a cap of $75,000 over the life of the EDA, so this is not a very large contribution from the economic development area. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions on this?
Maybe a general, sorry.
No, go ahead.
A general question for the whole Eastgate area. I know we've talked about the amount of soil that needs to be moved, the slopes. What happens to that soil? Is there any agreement with, because there's pretty good value to that, I think.
Yeah.
You've talked about the amount of dump trucks that need to be hauled out of one of the sites.
Yeah.
Is there
So
any-
Waste Management has taken some of that soil to their site to use for some of the fillable capping of the landfill. Others have just been agreements with private individuals where that's been removed.
But it's monetized? I mean, is it the developer that benefits from the value of that, or RDA?
It can be. The tricky part there is there is a pretty big expense on transporting that, so their goal is to try to balance the site as much as possible. So a lot of it's just moving, right? Just excavating and moving some of that ground. And Steve can chime in if you'd like to, but these developers try to balance those sites to the extent they can, so they don't have to haul away a lot of that dirt. If they do have to haul away, there's pretty big costs associated with that for the cost of the fuel and the trucks that need to do that. So I think they do try to keep it as close as they can. That's why on that particular jail property, they've been able to move some of that to the waste management site, which would benefit them as well. And I don't know about exactly how they monetize that, what the agreements have been, but I know some of that's going to be moved over on that site. So, but there's, besides just the cost of the soil itself, there's just all those other costs associated with the equipment, the moving of the soil that make that expensive proposition.
So the additional 20 jobs is going to be on that side?
Yeah, part of this is an expansion of their existing operations.
Right.
They'll probably have some split of that, but this is going to allow them to add 20 jobs to their operation.
Okay.
Yep.
My question is just about the amount. So it is substantially lower than some that we've seen. And I imagine they're probably here, so they know what that is. But is that amount going to help as substantially as they expected it to?
This is an interesting category of use. So this, again, our previous focus of that area has been and will continue to be aerospace related jobs, right? So as we've had agreements with other landowners up there, what we focused on is if you're not bringing in an aerospace job, then that tax increment available for those types of projects would be less. So this is, like I say, consistent with those other agreements. We have agreements with some of those other property owners that say, if you don't bring in this type of a contractor, there's kind of a table matrix that says, this is how much increment you'd be eligible for. So we try to make it consistent with those other agreements. So 50% is consistent for what we said to those developers out there for a non-aerospace related business.
I could talk to that point if you did want me to. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, we brought in the dirt already. We had to bring in dirt as opposed to many who were trying to get rid of it. We actually attempted to get some of the dirt that was already there that they were wanting to get rid of. And they wouldn't work with us, unfortunately. But most people that we found were willing to give dirt for free. It was the haul time that he addressed, so it's mostly the transport costs. But to your point, roughly it did cost about $200,000 to bring in dirt. And so, I mean, it's not covering it all, but every little bit helps.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
No?
I entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt resolution 24-09.
That is 09, it says 02 up there. It is 09.
Yeah,
It's 09 here.
09 on here.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I second that.
Which one? 209?
It's 09.
09. Okay.
The one in the motion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and have it passes. Okay, those are the two items that we have regarding our RDA meeting, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn and go into our regular scheduled work meeting.
So moved. Second.
Thank you very much. We'll give him, or Tori, being a minute here to go ahead and close this one out. And then,
Well, hi, Tori.
Tori. For the next one.
If you need help, Clint's really good at it. He decided it. Yeah, I-
You did.
if you ask me, I just close that with, we just talk.
Right after.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll now go into our work meeting for Layton Cities for July 18th. Our work meeting is starting at 5:40, and we'll go ahead and do our reports, and we can go ahead and start as usual. Hold my notes here. I do want to report at the sewer district. That was really about the only meeting I've had lately, but we did discuss, and I mentioned this back when we were talking about the possibilities of an increase for our own fees here in the city. So the sewer district is discussing and looking at probably doing a $2 increase in July of 2025. And then they want to skip a year and do it, well, they'll skip a year and then do another $2 increase and then skip a year to do another one. So they want to do alternating years, but at the same time, they'll do just like we do here. They'll assess it to see if it's necessary to go ahead and implement that additional increase. So I guess look for information coming from them on what the impact are for our city. The progress on Hillfield Road, just out of curiosity, because I thought this was kind of interesting, you guys be interested in knowing. They're laying about 60 to 80 feet a day. Does that sound about right, Steve? As far as the amount of pipe that's going in the ground there. So they're making good progress, and so far they're on schedule. And then I told you last time I'd let you know when the grand opening / ribbon cutting will be for the new pump station out there. And it is scheduled now for August 21st. And they'll have like an open house type thing from 1 to 3 p.m. That's the main information there. I will give you a quick update just because I've been trying to do it all along on the homeless committee or the task force. Where we're sitting there, once again, it's not decided, but we're narrowing in on the fact that we have to turn in our plan to the state by August 1. And right now it's looking like that that everybody's liking the idea of making it more mobile, so it's not impacting one city. And so in doing so, the county is willing to, this is, we're saying they'll purchase it, but that's what really this whole thing comes down to, is where the dollars, the funding is coming from. But if they get approved for the funding, they are talking about doing a portable tent, 2 portables actually, and these are not just the basic ones, they're the really good military style ones that has the, that kind of inflate and then has the circulating heat inside. And depending on how elaborate they want to go, they can do the airlock doors and everything in there, and possibly even do the curtains or segregating different areas. But the reason why they wanted to do 2 is for male, female, and then also if they need to curtain off a family or something like that.
How big are these? If you put in our parking lot, do you know?
Yeah, I think it was a 30 by 30, I'm not positive.
30 by 30?
Yeah, I think
That's not very big.
yeah, well, they only have to accommodate 15 to 20 cars. So that's why they didn't want to,
Total or per tent?
well, total.
Yeah.
In addition to that, there's the idea as far as a bus, having a mobile bus go around. And this would be like a touring bus, but it would be converted into cots. So you'd have, not cots, but bunks going down the sides of it. And if they could get 18 to 20 cots in that as well, or bunks, I should say. And that they actually would have a curtain that they could draw across, so it kind of has some privacy. And the task force is liking that idea because it allows those that are homeless to be able to store their stuff under the storage, because these are touring buses. And if they have pets, they can put pets in the cages and also have them stored as well. So those are the 2 ideas they're definitely looking at. So I think the plan at this point, we don't know, like I said, it's not finalized, but it's looking to submit the plan for 1 touring bus and possibly 2 portables. And the reason why they're talking about the portables is because then that car overflow as well. So look that way.
And this would be for the temporary solution. That has to be presented by us.
Correct.
This is just code blue.
And well, it's mainly code blue, but it could also, code blue is all we're gonna submit right now. So that's the big there. That's really it. I haven't had the other meetings at all in July. Pretty much everybody feels some meetings because there's so much else going on. So, council, do you want to report on any of your meetings?
We didn't go anywhere.
I know, you've had quite a few.
We have a meeting still for CTC, but I do have on August 22nd here at the Kinley at 7 p.m. We're going to be doing that movie screening. The movie is called Screenagers, and it's a movie about addressing vaping, drugs, and alcohol in young people in the digital age. So about how what the effects are, and just a lot of really good information. The films have young people in them as well, so, and they're more documentary style. But this is an event that we're going to do at the Kinley. It'll be free. We'll have some gift card raffles. We've also worked with our partners in the school district where students who may have like carryover use can, if they attend this, then they can maybe get credit recovery for some of their use. And so we're starting to put all of that information out, and it's all announced it tonight again for the public. And we'll send you all the flyer.
Send it to all the football teams.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of guys that need to use that so they can play.
That's a good idea. So yeah, that's our big thing that's coming up for CTC, that event.
Okay, let's go ahead then and move on with our regular items on the work meeting agenda, which item number 3 is our active transportation plan. So, I know Mr. Price is probably going to present this for us.
Thank you. I did want to take just a moment and thank all the people that have helped us as we work through this process. I know that the mayor and council have been involved in this. Engineering and community development have been very helpful. And I will allow our project manager, Joanne, to present this to you. But we are all here. If you have questions, we'll be glad to answer it. And this is simply to make you aware of the plan. We have time to let you review it, and then we'll come back in a month or so and talk again.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here. I appreciate Dave. I just wanted to give a little shout out for everyone, again, who has helped out with this process. We started this back in 2021, 2022. And so we've worked very hard on this and have been very particular and thorough in this project. And so we're excited to share with you what we have today. Again, I just wanted to thank all the many disciplines within our department. Mindy over here, street engineer, has been a great help for me. I had others who don't work for the city anymore, but they also have been a great help. And so with no further ado, we'll walk into our Layton Active Transportation Plan. Tonight, this is an overview of what we'll be touching on. We'll go over our goals and objectives of the plan. We'll go through our planning process, and then we'll touch in on our existing conditions analysis, public involvement, participation, and then our recommendations and some implementation strategies. So, first of all, about this plan, I'm sure many know what active transportation is, but just in case you don't, it means any form of human-powered mobility, for example, walking, biking, rolling. Those are our forms that we're talking about here tonight. The purpose of this plan was to identify actions that the city could take to make these forms of walking and biking and rolling in Layton safe and convenient. We could not have done this project without the participation and coordination with the Wasatch Front Regional Council. They're not here, but we do want to recognize their grant and support that helped to fund this, along with the city's participation as well. And most of all, I just want you to know that as we present here tonight, this plan is not meant to dictate what we do. It's just meant to serve as a guide for us as city staff and as commissions and as elected officials on how to move forward. So please take that in consideration. So to start out,
One question.
yes.
Well, yeah, let's just take a question. Like the motorized things I see,
The e-bikes.
the big wheel, electric bikes, the scooters, I mean, is that included in that?
They are considered part of active transportation.
They are? Okay.
Good question. So to start out with our project, we as a steering committee, which comprised of staff, we also had Councilmember Morris and Mayor Petro, our Mayor Petro, who served on that committee along with many other outside entities such as UDOT, county. We all went together as we thought about these goals. We have 6 goals. This first slide shows 3 of them. We definitely wanted to make sure that our goals were that we were doing to provide active transportation, facilitated useful connections. We want to make sure that they go to meaningful spaces and locations such as our stores, our schools, our parks and open space, and so forth. And we would hope that this would be easy to read and make connections to the bigger regional connections through our transit and front runner station. Our second goal was to be able to support our local economy. We want to make sure that the network attracts regional recreation and improves access to local commerce. Third goal was to promote health and safety. The other 4, 5, and 6 goals were to be able to serve a wide variety of people, those who would be relying on other alternative modes of transportation outside of their own vehicle, and provides independence for them to be able to choose how to get around. Fifth goal was to provide quality user experience, something that's legible, intuitive, and accessible, that connects people to special places and attractions. And our last goal is to foster community support. Implementing the network should be guided by community input and feedback. This was a snapshot of our mile markers along the way. We had 4 main goals as we divided this project into chewable approaches, I guess you could say. We started out with the background research and existing conditions analysis, and then along the way we developed our goals, and then we moved to the next portion. We developed a network and policy recommendations and design guidelines, and then we moved into some implementation strategies and priorities for projects. And lastly, which is where we're here now today, is to present the final plan to you as our council. And I guess I should mention the green represents our steering committee check-in points, and the orange represents the public outreach effort. So first of all, we took a look at how is our existing active transportation network looking like today. Do we connect to daily needs? Are we serving areas of higher demand? Are we allowing or providing opportunities for the average person to use a bicycle for transportation? And does it serve residents who more likely need alternative modes of transportation? This is our active transportation to date. We have about, the blue lines represent bike lanes, and the green represents trails. As you can tell, most of our existing active transportation is mainly trails, mostly comprises of the DNRG Rail Trail, and then sections of the Case Creek Trail. As you can see, it's a little bit in process still of being connected. So that was one of our obvious learnings or takeaways from this, is that we need to be able to create connections and connectivity to make this be able to be purposeful. Along the way, I mentioned we did have some public participation, and also I mentioned our steering committee. This is just a list of those who were a part of it. And we have our Parks and Recreation, we have our long-range planning and traffic and sidewalk engineers, the CD, and then, like I mentioned, the mayor and Councilman Member Morris. And we had Planning Commission representatives, our Parks and Recreation Commission representative, the county, WFRC folks, UTA, and UDOT. And then we had 2 different check-ins with the public. These are a little snapshot at some of the discussions that we shared and reached out to during the public outreach session. The first phase we did in spring of 22. It was basically a time to listen, to be able to hear where people were identifying issues and challenges and desires. And then in the fall, we followed up with asking them how to help with prioritizing our recommended network. And I might mention we had really good participation, 882 people during phase 1 and 683 during phase 2, which is great participation.
Pizza. Donuts.
That's right, we did have pizza and donuts.
Long time ago, I started.
So these graphics are to represent different types of treatments that were developed to create our network. And I'll just go through them real quickly to help you understand. When we talk about signed bike routes, this first type of treatment is basically routes that are marked with signage, basically saying this is a bike route. Bike lanes, we have some of those throughout the city. You've seen on Layton Parkway, for example, or even here along Wasatch Drive. They're just a 5 to 7 foot width lane designated for bicyclists to use along the road. Neighborhood byways, these are usually to help with traffic calming. You notice they have some bulb outs, they do pavement markings, they add signage. It's usually applied in neighborhood streets where the volumes are not as busy, but it's to help calm the traffic. Buffered bike lanes are very similar to bike lanes, which I talked about before. They just added additional striping, so there's a little bit more of a separation between the vehicular lane and where the bicycles would travel. The separated bike lanes are completely separated from the road. They usually has some sort of barrier between it, whether that's a park strip or a concrete barrier of some sort, but it separates bicyclists completely from the vehicles. And then we have side paths, which are widened sidewalks. One of these that we have here in the city is along 2700 North, a little bit wider than your typical side paths. And then one that we're very familiar with is shared use paths, or commonly referred to as trails. Now, spot improvements. These are concentrated or focused on where we have crossings happening. There are 3 different types. There's intersection improvements, where you improve the traffic with doing sidewalk bulb outs or adding some extra signalization, just something that helps as you come to an intersection to make the vehicle aware of a crossing for pedestrians, so it's improving it. Mid-log crossings, an example of this is our Hawk crossings along Hillfield Road, for example, something that's used to facilitate between the intersections of the road where pedestrians would be crossing. And then the last type of crossing is a grade separated crossing. These can be either overpasses or underpasses. We also looked at some non-infrastructure treatments. These were policies, programs, and initiatives that were made to make it easier to implement active transportation infrastructure and encourage more active transportation uses. So we worked with Alta Planning on this process, and they provided some street design and layout guidelines for us, which included standard cross sections, pedestrian street connectivity standards, and block lanes. They also helped outline amenity requirements, suggestions for parking your bicycle, and then they also touched in on ways that you can help create community engagement through education, events and activities, and other initiatives as well. So there's a wealth of information in there that we can read and learn more about how to do non-infrastructure treatments. So getting into the bulk of our network, there was a project prioritization process that occurred, and this was, like I said, it's just a guide for choosing which projects may be the ones to approach or consider first. And this was evaluated through this chart on the right. Basically there's long-term, high value, short-term, high value, low value, and opportunistic. So high value is a project that has been scored and weighted, that has a lot of points that go back to our goals, providing connectivity, connecting to schools, to transit, targeting those areas where the need for it is most needed at the time. And then those on the bottom, low value, opportunistic, they don't really have as strong a value, but they might be more readily available to you. And so as we prepared or scored every single line work that we had done, we took the top 10 from our projects, which included facilities and spot improvements, so those graphics that I talked to you about and what they were. And these are the top 10 that surfaced as possible options to focus on as we look forward. First, I'll just touch base on them real quickly. The Main Street buffered bike lanes was one of them. That's here along Main Street. The Gordon Avenue buffered bike lanes, that would be this section through here, adding 5 buffered bike lanes. There's a Case Creek Trail extension here down by the Front Runner Station. Gordon at Hill Mid-Long Crossing right there. And then another Case Creek Trail extension, which was up here, actually in our park, and widening the trail that we have to a wider width that accommodates active transportation. Hillfield Road buffered bike lanes down from the top of 193 down to Hillfield. 2200 grade separated crossing, which is the project we're studying right now. And then the Hillfield Road.
Approved?
I think we're still working on it. Hillfield Road buffered bike lanes. Yeah, and the Church Street bike route and the K Street trail connection. So those were our top 10 that came through with those project prioritization scoring. And that helps to inform us on what might be the next best one.
Joel, I just have a question before you move forward on the suggestions of the bike lanes to add. I think I might know an answer to this question, but I know that there have been some meetings I've attended with Los Angeles Regional Council, and people are concerned, rightfully so, of the safety of bike lanes, the existing ones and those predominantly that just have the lines, like the marking. And I'm wondering, in that 99 miles of proposed, only 0.6 miles of that are like bike lanes that actually have an actual barrier. And so I'm just thinking Main Street, and I'm thinking about how busy that is already, and adding a buffer bike lane, which just adds the additional lines or marking. But I'm just wondering, what was the reasoning behind not having more of the bike lanes that actually provide a barrier? I mean, structurally I get it, but I just kind of wanted to know what the response was.
Yeah, with the Main Street, we do have down in the downtown area, that is where we have a fully grade, separated pathway, which is what you're asking about. We're trying to target those around town centers where more activity and people would be. As you move farther up toward Clearfield, a lot of it has to do with cost too. They're very expensive, and just coordinating the food out to it is their road.
I think in the packet wasn't like $60-something a foot.
And they're pretty expensive to do it.
Yeah,
So we have to be very strategic about that.
If I could, sometimes it's not always just about the cost either. Sometimes we just don't have the ability or the capacity on that road to add those elements where we can put in a bike path.
Lastly, our consultants did help provide cost estimates for us at the planning level and pointed us toward funding sources. There are a lot of places to be able to reach out to partner. As you know, grants really do support and help out projects such as this. And then they did provide information on facility design best practices. So there's a lot of content in there to add to and read about that will assist us as we move forward with studying and considering the next steps. Like I said, this is a very big project, and tonight was just basically an overview, and we encourage you to read it. And we'll certainly come back at another time when you're ready, and we'll follow up with next steps. Are there any questions?
The new section of 2700 West, I noticed the sidewalk on the east side, is it larger?
That's a site
Other
map.
side, is that considered a side path?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great.
I tried to go through most of it, I haven't gone through it all, but I thought it was a very well written plan and a lot of good detail and definitely a lot of variety that we can work from and choose our priorities, even though they made their own suggestions and recommendations. But I thought there was a lot of good feedback in there.
Definitely.
Sorry, one more. You sent out a lot of grant requests for some of those trail connections. Are those, we got good approval on those or return on those?
With regard to
Like, well, the Main Street Trail was one, or the Cape Street Trail, Main Street to the city center.
I think it's still pending final approval, but it did look very favorable. Thank you for your letter of recommendation.
But those ones that you've sent grant requests out, those rank pretty high on the top 10.
Oh, yes.
9 or 10
Yes.
priorities you have.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good check that we're seeming to follow what's being studied as well. So, yeah.
Well, I know the Wasatch Front Regional Council's been intimately involved in watching and understanding what we're doing to try to help with the funding as well. So plus they've got their whole active transportation plan that they're working on.
Yeah, and they're really good about coordinating with us at the city level. They don't obviously want to do something different than what we feel comfortable with. So there's a lot of collaboration. They've met often with us to make sure we're speaking the same thing.
Being an avid biker that I am, avid meaning, like I did it once when I was 11. And maybe Clint, I mean, you paint the line, right? But people still park, you can still park. So it doesn't,
People do part, they should.
well, I know they do. That's what I'm asking. So people can still legally park in the bike lane.
As we do bike lanes, we do want to make sure that the accommodations for the engineering's plans, that automobiles where they're needed to have on-street parking is accommodated, so, yeah.
Okay, because that's, to me, that's the biggest problem in the bike lane, when the poor guy's now there's a car in his lane, he's got to get out a little, and, you know.
And you have the door open.
Oh, yeah, I never even thought of that, yeah, somebody else at the
It
door.
reminds me of what Alex has talked about with crosswalks. There is I don't want to say it's a total false sense of security, but there is some
Yeah,
false
sure
sense of
there is.
security
Yeah.
to a degree
Right,
with bike lanes.
yeah, if we didn't have those lights on, when, where
The trails
our
are.
trails cross, we'd be hitting people all the time. I mean, it's amazing, you know, and I know it's a trail, and I see the light way down there, and people are blowing through it, and I'm going, that's a red light, you know? So, yeah, that's,
Yeah, that's the main reason why I bring up the full-on lane. I do like the side path options. And then it just takes education on both parts, because then you also have bikers who don't want to take those types of pathways, want to be in the road. And so it's just, you know, it could be a tragedy waiting to happen all the time if you don't have both parties being vigilant, which we know that's not always the case. So that's my only, you know, concern about 99 miles of proposed bike path and less than 1 mile of that being something that is a potential for protection, for true protection, as opposed to a false sense of protection. And that goes not just for the bike rider, but also for people who are driving, because they're like, oh yeah, there's a bike lane over there, but I need to turn here. So I'm gonna turn even though it's a bike lane. So it's a lot to think about and to decide upon. And I agree with the mayor, the presentation in the packet, I mean, it's very robust. I mean, you guys have done a really great job. So we have a lot at our fingertips to go through and discuss, but just keeping all of those things top of mind, you know, because there are hazards still, but we can work, you know, with what we provide. So thank you.
You're welcome.
One of my concerns is Dave brought up the popularity of e-bikes. And it's treated in their speed limits and stuff for e-bikes, but the more accommodating we're gonna be with bike lanes, those are little motorcycles.
yeah.
And it was discussed, no, it wasn't discussed. That's just an issue that last night we were, anecdotal, sorry Zach, last night we were heading up Fairfield on the way home, and then Fairfield and Gordon, there was a dad and three kids, and they were turning left to go up Gordon, and they were all on e-bikes, and like assisted e-bike, not pedaling. These were motorcycles in the road, and just to, I mean, it's part of what we have to discuss, I guess, moving forward. It's a factor. And so I don't know if police department, if there are studies or if they want to be involved in some of that, I don't know, but I don't worry too much more about the bicyclists themselves. Been doing it for a long time, but it's this popularity of e-bikes, and you feel like you've got more power and.
Well,
You do.
you don't have to have a driver's license either.
Or, yeah, it's a motorcycle.
You know, so they just get on and, you know, my son was telling me last night, he said that they bought the scooters that are electric. He said they'll go 19 miles an hour. And so, you know, he says, I won't let my kids ride it without helmets. He wasn't thinking about anybody else. He was thinking about his kid, you know, which I understand, but, you know, it's not like they go 5 miles, you know, like you're doing it with your left foot and riding with your right.
So there are responsible riders, I'm not saying there aren't, it's just you add
Oh,
those who aren't
sure.
with a false sense of security of a bike
On the
lane,
lane,
and
yeah.
then you've got some trouble, so it just needs to be.
And I never thought about opening car door.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I
how many
did,
times have you done
Well, you almost hit with your truck, but you.
well,
went
yeah,
with your
but
car
that was intentional.
door. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, you
You
know,
didn't think about it.
don't you ride on my streets.
I do know, I personally, as I've been around the city more and more, I am shocked at how many scooters
Oh.
and e-bikes and the vast range of ages that are on them as well. I mean, you know, I know we didn't want to pass our scooter, the line, yeah, the private rental of those, but boy, the personal use of them have just escalated tremendously here, and I don't know, I'm curious, Chief, as far as what you guys are seeing in it, what your take is as well. I think we definitely need to be weighing in on all of this.
Share the road.
Huh?
Share the road.
Slow down should be the first words, because that's our number one complaint I get, is everybody's
Unless
speed.
these bike lanes are clearly marked with no parking, you know, they are also
Yeah.
parking lanes, and as the councilman had considered, also turning lanes, right? So
Yeah.
right turns, left turns, so.
I actually have a couple of definitional questions that I want to read through this. So when we talk about active transportation, there's no difference between a bike lane for a trail, Case Creek Trail, where someone's doing that for fun, and a bike lane that someone potentially could be going to and from work.
They're both for the same
They're
purpose.
both active transportation. Do we know how many people actually use the bike lanes?
We don't have any means or ways to do counts for those departments.
Because my worry, not with this, just with I actually talked to Alex about this. A lot of the Wasatch Front Regional Council stuff is all urban. It's very urban centric. It's got really good words like walkability and all, you know, cars are bad and all that stuff. Well, that's not what we live in. We don't live in that city. In fact, 1.4% of Layton residents use active transportation for their work commute. 98% of people in the city don't use that. And so I guess why I was asking definitionally, just when we decide what we're going to do from a policy standpoint, you know, I like that we have a bunch of ideas that you've given us that we can do, but I think of active transportation as trails, you know, as more recreational, not necessarily trying to create some policy to have, you know, drive from my house to drive on a bike in early January to the Farmheimer station for some reason. And so, thank you, because when transportation just almost in my mind, it just, we talk about transportation all the time, it's like how do you get from to and from, but there's more to it than just
Well,
doing it for fun or for work or
Yeah.
for shopping or whatever it may be.
there's a lot of difference speed-wise on a trail compared to a 40-mile-an-hour road.
Yeah.
You know, so your chances are greater when you have a problem there, you have a problem, you know.
Thank you.
All right, we're good on that? Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mindy, for your input as well.
And thanks, Dave, for having Jordan, yeah, so for having her here. Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it. It's never as boring when she does it.
Okay, next up, we'll have Chief Swanson present the interlocal agreement with Layton City and South Beach.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, City Council. I'm here to discuss Resolution 2424, which is the contract between South River City and Layton for dispatch services for EMS and also fire. As you know, back in November, we started dispatching for North Davis, fire and EMS, and also Clearfield City. And we've had other cities inquire as to whether or not we could dispatch for them. We cannot take some of those larger cities in, but South Weaver has inquired, and they are small enough that we can actually put them in now before our building is built. So just another kind of small step towards this north end consolidation. So I brought Carl, as you know, our dispatch manager, is going to present the contract.
So this contract is very similar to the two that we signed last year, or late last year with Clearfield and the North Davis Fire District. The only real change is that we've updated the numbers for the current fiscal year. And then we've also taken out all of the language that was specific to the consolidation with Clearfield. So it just kind of slimmed it down and made it a little bit simpler. South River Fire has approximately one call on average a day. So this really is a pretty small drop in the bucket for us, you know, overall. You can see the amount there, that their share of the total budget is you know, about $13,000 annually for that. So we don't anticipate any measurable impact upon our services or anything that we provide, but yeah, like the chief said, it is just one more step towards that north end consolidation of services. The sheriff's office will still be handling the patrol, you know, duties there from law enforcement. This is strictly just the South River Fire Department. Does anyone have any questions at all about the?
I have a question, not about South Weaver specifically, but North County and south of the county. So Bountiful is taking care of the southern part, we're taking care of the northern part. What does that mean? Where's the line? Is Kaysville, are they?
Can the best deal?
Yeah, exactly. Can they like, well, I'll shop around and maybe Bountiful can take care of it? Is there an agreement between us and Bountiful, or how does that all work?
At the moment, Kaysville and Farmington did go out to both ask us what it would cost for us to do dispatch services for them. Obviously, we couldn't even take them on until the building is built, just from a size capacity. Kaysville, I think, was the first to do so. Farmington, by virtue of geography, also made that request of Bountiful and with us. The choice was made by Kaysville and Farmington that, at least at this point, they're going to be joining the Bountiful Dispatch Center as of January 1st. So that was that's where
The reason it's cost, and just to be frank about it, is what, you know, the calculations we gave them are at current, so they're not even for 18 months out when the building's potentially finished, right? But the real cost, we're not gonna subsidize anybody, everyone needs to pay their fair share. And just to be frank, Bountiful's offered them a subsidy cost, basically matching what they're paying the sheriff's office currently, which is greatly subsidized. So that's the route they're going. The problem is that Bountiful's in right now, and maybe not really our businesses, but now they're scrambling for consoles that they don't have to dispatch for agencies that they've already agreed to dispatch. So I don't know how long that will be.
So we won't really have not an agreement, a memorandum of understanding. It'll just be whoever gives us the best deal. Potentially, we could just be Layton and just us. I mean, potentially.
There are some legal constraints into how that can happen, because in order to join, to get dispatch services from a PSAP, you have to be contiguous to the geography there. So Clinton cannot say to Bountiful, we want to be dispatched by you, because there's other cities in the way of that. So there's going to be a boundary somewhere. Currently, that looks like it's gonna be the Layton-Kaysville boundary, or the boundary, which gives us about 65% of the population up here on the north end to 35% down to the south end. So it's not a, terribly offset number there. That's kind of forward-looking numbers, I should say. That's looking down the road, based on population growth in the north end. So it doesn't, if they choose to do that, that's fine. We'll still have other cities up here that will be joining us. That's the intent, and we have an interlocal agreement draft that we're working on for that time, in the next couple of years, where we say, all right, come on, sign now, and we'll all have that interlocal agreement, which will truly reflect the shared nature of the north end.
Can you go beyond county border? Can you help?
As long as you're contiguous, yes.
So West Haven or Hubbard or all touches.
As long as you got Clinton in between.
Sorry, Roy,
Right.
West Haven, Hubbard, Warren, West Warren.
Harriet Slayerville.
Where is it? Taylor.
They're inside a taxing district, so it would
Okay,
be
that's
less
different.
likely that there would be some sort of change from a Roy or anybody else along that border area.
Do we,
Okay.
we're building a building,
Yes.
okay?
It's all just suburban.
Does capacity fit in that?
Yes.
So we have a limit to what we can do.
The
I mean,
capacity,
even though it may be great.
potentially we could dispatch for the whole county.
Okay,
We'll have that
okay.
capacity.
Yeah.
One of the original lines that was discussed actually did start a case, so we've discussed several of these ongoing conversations. One was south of Farmington and one was Kaysville South. And actually, Kaysville South is actually 45% of the population. And the north would be 55% of the population. If it were to start at Farmington, then it would have been 65-35. The hopes, though, from outside agencies like the Sheriff's Department was that it would start at Farmington because the Sheriff's Office is located in Farmington, and the Sheriff's Office has committed to come to us once the building's built, so they were hoping that where they're in Farmington would also join more. And that still may happen by the time this building is finished. There's still a lot that's evolving, so.
So give us an update on the building. I know that you said 18 months out, but I mean, the other one's still standing, so.
Yeah, it's kind of a.
We need a sledgehammer made or so.
Well,
I
now,
was ready to 3 months ago.
We're working through the final package for the early construction stuff. As we move in the electricity, there's a stormwater drain project that the city was already planning that we're going to incorporate into this because it's
Alright.
good to do at the same time. And then the demo of the building. So we're looking at probably September, you're gonna start seeing things actually happening out there right now. And then December 1st is kind of our target for actually, pouring a basement and getting going, so.
So basically, all the demo work would be done before we deal with the light situation. That's what I'm thinking as far as when we get into the, the lights for Christmas and that. 'Cause,
Well-
there's holidays that keep falling in the way of everything, and it's
Right.
like, but time out, this is so critical, and this is, I know we're gonna watch our time, our spending time frame to use the funding that we've allocated for it too.
We want to try to get it done so it's not disrupting Fest, but also before the lights are, a lot of people here for that. So.
Well, yeah, for sure. Just for fun though, if Farmington came over, does that mean we have to take Kaysville too?
Well, is that
There's
matter?
no contiguous line if Farmington comes to us.
The sheriff's office jurisdiction kind of unites a lot of things, and because they cover all of the unincorporated areas there.
Right.
And so you can become contiguous depending upon where the sheriff's office goes.
Okay.
So if the sheriff's office, their intent is to come with us, then technically a Farmington could come to us because they are contiguous
Well,
through the
yeah,
county.
yeah.
So it gets a little different like that, but then we also want to think, we don't want to do something that's not operationally smart.
Right.
Well,
So
sure.
it makes a lot of sense to draw a line somewhere and then have some good conversations with Bountiful on the south end to say, we don't want to keep moving that line, whoever's giving the better deal that day, we don't want to keep doing that. We
Yeah.
want
For sure.
to set things not in stone, but in,
You would think because people like Clinton or, they don't really have a choice, do they?
I mean, it depends. again, the sheriff's office, they could go and join a Weaver County if they chose to do so. I mean, there are things out there, but Weaver County would charge them a similar amount, the cost of doing business, right?
It shouldn't be about cost.
Much about service.
It should be.
Yeah, it should be about service.
You're in
State
this-
of
You're in
lines.
this area.
It's about saving
Take care
lives.
of that. It's supposed to be a solution.
And that was the all discussions, not to labor, but all the discussions, good faith discussions through all this was based on that premise. This is a departure from that approach, but the way we've structured it, we've been consistent from day one. The city has, or you guys as well, we believe was your view. We've articulated that this, Layton's gonna do what it's gonna do. You have that responsibility, we take it seriously. Those who wanna participate, we're not going to be part of incenting or disincenting people. If you want quality service as good as you can get any place, we're happy to accommodate you, you know, if the operational efficiencies work and contiguousness. But if you think that you're gonna start some bidding war between Bountiful and Layton Layton's gonna lower costs, we're simply not gonna do it. We're not gonna charge our citizens to subsidize somebody else's citizens. That's not a long-term strategy. It's poor every way around. So I think what you'll see is that maybe over time is that those who are focused on the right things about top-notch service for their residents will go to the agencies that they can provide that better. And if others want to do different, that's fine. But at least my mindset would certainly be that we're not interested in today, you're here today and gone tomorrow. You know, once you make that decision, then that's the decision you live with, which we're just not going to participate in that game, right? We're focused on taking care of the citizens and providing exceptional service. And this other is a sidebar that's just distracting from that. So it'll all settle out. And I think you'll see the cities are serious about will move there.
So along those lines, before the north-south thing actually happens, if it happens, which we think it will, these agreements that we have with Clearfield and the one we're looking at for South Weaver, they have their own contract deeds and whatnot anyway. And so if we were to do that with some other city, we would do the same thing we're doing now. So the whole back and forth type of thing wouldn't really, that wouldn't be something anyway, because you would have a contract start date, a contract end date, you know, like renewal period or whatnot. That's the way we would do it anyway, I would imagine, right?
The contracts as written between Clearfield, North Davis, and the one before you, they have an anticipated replacement date of December of 2026, where we're going to replace that with that kind of overarching interlocal with all of the agencies that are participating on the north end. So it will be replaced by another document. We're working on that right now.
Well, I like the way you calculated it too, on, you know, the amount of calls and the percentage population base, so I think that's fair. I mean, that makes it easy, so it's across the board for any city. We're not playing favorites anymore.
Yeah, once the formula's set up, it's very easy to plug in and update every year. So it seems to be working well for us. And as we spread things out and things change a little bit, the numbers will, you know, move a little bit as we take on new agencies, but it takes the pie and divides it up fairly.
The advisory board that's in this one, it's just expanded to include someone from South Weaver, is that, or is this a new creation? Because I don't remember that before, and it just could be because I don't recall.
The advisory board for this group is only made up of the large, or the main cities here. It includes North Davis Fire District and Clearfield and us. We will have representation. We will have a perhaps more inclusive board in that new agreement. But at this point, we're not changing the oversight board to include any representation for South Weaver at this time.
Okay, we good? We got 3 more items. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, appreciate that. Hey, Chad, you said the last 3 items, so I'll let you go ahead and proceed.
Thanks, Mayor. A few land use items to talk about tonight. First one, I think, is our our home occupation, I guess, which order that's in, I think that's the right one.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is.
So just to talk briefly as I pull up the slides, this is as you know, the code allows citizens to submit for modifications to the code. So this is what's happened. We've got one of our citizens that's asked that we change our code to accommodate a business that they would like to start. There's many of you, I think almost everybody was involved either on the planning commission or city council when we changed our home occupation ordinance about almost 4 years ago. It was 2020. And as you remember, at the time, we had some pretty restrictive home occupation ordinance requirements. We allowed for a lot more ability for people to have a home occupation than we had before in our code. And so as part of that process, we wanted to try to create a balance between allowing for reasonable use of a home as a home occupation, but also anticipating that there could be impacts to adjacent neighbors if we went too far to the extreme of allowing too much home occupation use. So the compromise was that we allow for 2 home occupations right now. One can be what we call a low impact home occupation. That's kind of, for me, what I think of as a typical home occupation. That's the guy sitting with his laptop, doing consulting work or something where the neighbors wouldn't even know that they were a business. High impact home occupation are things where it's more obvious that there's an occupation going on in the home. So there's 2 categories really. One is the category of people who are having people come to their home either for some type of educational purpose, maybe it's a piano lesson, swimming lesson, something where actual clients are coming to the home, or where there's employees coming to the home. And we carved out, if you remember, that someone can have 1 non-resident employee without getting the high impact home occupation, but more than that requires a high impact home occupation application. The other category is the ones that are more like contractors, landscape contractors, those things that by virtue of the nature of the business, they tend to have impacts on neighbors. That could be storage and equipment. It could be that they have employees that are coming to the home to stage in the morning. So those are kind of the 2 categories. This particular instance, we had an individual that came and asked us to have 2 high-impact home occupations. There's an existing dog grooming business in the home, so we have clients coming to the home to get dogs groomed, and they wanted to put a high-impact contractor type use as a second home occupation. Code, as we said, limits it to just 1 high-impact home occupation, one with a low-impact home occupation. So we did deny that application for the applicant. They've come back to us and requested that we make some consideration to have some changes to our code. I'm not going to go through really any of these slides unless we have questions, but this was brought up to the Planning Commission. There was a lot of good discussion at the Planning Commission. Many of those planning commissioners were involved in that original discussion about what's the appropriate level of use for a home occupation. The challenge with this, as you know, is that we have to be able to come up with an ordinance that can be universally applied. So we may have someone that's a perfect, responsible user, but we have to make an ordinance that applies to everybody equally and can be fairly applied. So our concern in this particular ordinance is that we have created that classification of high impact home occupations for contractor use because they have a high tendency to expand beyond what that initial application is. And that's one of the reasons why we feel like there needs to be a little more scrutiny on them. They're just by the virtue of the use, they have a high tendency to bring equipment or materials onto the site. So we want to make sure we have some good rules that regulate that. So we have recommended denial of this particular request by this citizen. This is a citizen-initiated text amendment. This did go to the Planning Commission. They reviewed it. One of the questions that came up with the Planning Commission that is kind of the key question is, how many of these have we had requests for? Really, it's been a very small number. 4 over the course of the last 4 years. In every case but this one, we found workarounds. And I'll tell you one workaround that we've allowed that is not explicitly talked about in the code, but we have allowed this flexibility, which is if there's a contractor, which we've had several of these, that only wants a home office. They have no desire, they have a construction yard in North Salt Lake or someplace else where they're doing all their storage of their materials. They just want someplace where they can get their laptop out, do some billing, those kind of things. We classified those as an office use, not as a contractor use. They're just an office. And so we've allowed those to go forward. And most of these requests have been solved by that interpretation of code. So that has helped. This particular individuals that we offered that solution. That was something that they weren't interested in and wanted to pursue this text amendment. So one thing that may come up, not sure if our applicant's here right now, but we may bring up the question of the trailer. One of the suggestions of the applicant was that we could change our regulations about how trailers are kept on these lots and how we classify those. We're really concerned about trying to get into just the minutia of what type of trailer can do this and that. We already do that to a certain extent. Trying to make that even more, I don't know what the right word would be, even more detailed than what we have now. We're just concerned about the ability for us to, again, equally apply that to citizens. So that was a lot of talking. I thought this one maybe deserved a little bit of discussion so you could know the background, but we are recommending that the council deny this request, and the planning commission also unanimously recommended denial of this request. So happy to answer any questions.
So there's no actual land or text amendment. This is just if we were to go yes, then you guys would go back and try to figure out how this would work.
If there was a desire of the council to try and make something like this work, we would suggest that you give us direction to go back and do that. There's no text for us, there's no ordinance for us to look at tonight.
I can see where that trailer issue could cause some issues because we're dealing with folks that cannot have their camping trailer parked for more than, was it 24 hours? There, I think we passed. So, I mean, that would be a tough one where you'd allow a business to be parked, but not a camping trailer.
We do allow trailers. What the proposal was to make it less restrictive on that trailer issue and to put a different kind of trailer for a low impact than high impact. That just, it becomes so hard for us to track. So.
Okay, you guys good on that for now? Any other questions,
I just have
comments?
one, and I don't know, it's not, it kind of goes with it. The houses you build behind your house, the ADU, can a trailer be one?
The trailer cannot be an ADU.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you couldn't bring in a home?
You're talking about like an RV or something
No,
like that?
no, I'm talking about a real.
Like a mobile home.
A mobile
A
home?
mobile, yeah, that's.
You'd have to build it on a foundation just like any other type of home. So you couldn't just have a trailer on wheels back there. You could potentially do that if it met our regulations, but you'd have to build it.
But it would have to just be on a foundation.
And there was a question that came up also along those lines as far as a container. So the containers, burn those to
Oh,
you,
yeah,
but then making sure that aesthetically it's
containers
right.
are gone.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, well, we passed that.
I mean, you can't have containers on property.
20, I think it was.
About the same time as this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions on that?
Okay,
All right.
go ahead.
Next one is our moderate income housing plan addendum. This is another addendum. We did one last year, actually, I think the year before. So we've had a few of these, but this is in response to our reporting requirements for the state in relation to our moderate income housing plan. This is really a housekeeping change. I want to just go through a couple of things that we're doing. I'm not going to talk through this entire table, but this will give you a flavor of what we're doing. In the past year's reporting requirements, we were asked by the state to be more specific about our goals and policies, to give specific timeframes, which we did. As we went through that process this year, the state has directed that in an attempt to not have to come back and change these every year, to be a little less specific than we were. So we're going from, you can see that was a specific date last time. Now we're going to just say this will be done on an annual basis, so that we don't have to go through this process of amending every single year our general plan. So this is a general plan amendment because the moderate income housing plan is within our general plan, but that really is the gist of it. All these changes are to change specific dates to things like annual review and those kind of things. One change on policy though, strategy 3.2, which is not part of the state strategy, but was part of our moderate income housing plan before the state got involved in these in such a detailed way. This has to do with the weatherization program. We've never administered that. We've just found that it's really something that is handled by the state right now. It's actually handled through the Department of Workforce Services and their Housing and Community Development Department. So we're going to take that strategy out because we've never done it. We don't see a time that we will. So when this was adopted, and this was actually adopted back in 2018, I believe, there was a thought that we might get into that category, but we haven't. So we recommend to take that out. Any other questions about that? Okay.
Go ahead.
The next one is a general plan amendment as well. This is a general plan amendment and rezone. This has been requested by the Automotive Group in relation to some expansion that they would like to do in our city. So the location of this is 282 North Main, shown there at the red star, get a little bit more detail there. It's a fairly small rezone area. It's 0.65 acres. You can see it outlined in red. I will say our policy is to go out on the streets on both sides. That will eventually extend either side should the council decide to adopt this change. This is again, a general plan amendment. The reason being, as you can see on this map, this is the very border of our mixed-use TOD zoning designation. So this is our downtown area, that mixed-use transit-oriented development area. This was originally designated as part of that, as part of the general plan. As we've looked at this particular request, it's really being driven by really one kind of component here, which is the need to align with UDOT requirements, access points across the street. So you can see this existing access way across Main Street. There's many reasons why you want to try to align those access points for public safety reasons, for traffic circulation reasons, but UDOT has indicated they're going to require that access to be aligned. So the applicant has gone out and acquired some property so they can align those access ways and have that access on Main Street for their new dealership that they'd like to build. Now, as we looked at this from just the standpoint of our general plan and adoption of that general plan, of course, anytime we have a request for a general plan amendment, that needs to be very carefully considered. We don't take these lightly. There are a couple factors that we looked at in relation to this property, though, that we felt justified consideration of a general plan amendment. Number one, you'll recall the state has recently adopted a requirement, well, it was about 2 years ago, a requirement for a station area plan. And that station area plan is supposed to cover areas within half a mile of existing fixed rail transit stations. So in this particular case, as we looked at that measurement, it just stopped short. The half-mile radius is just short of this property. So it's not in that area kind of recognized as the most critical for planning for higher densities for that transit-oriented development. Second thing we looked at, this is kind of a unique property. I'm going to go to the other aerial photo. There's some constraints on this property that we felt really did not make it a great candidate for mixed-use development anyway. We've got an existing cell tower right here located on the property. No indication that that's going to be moved anytime soon, which would make its combination with the property to the south for a mixed-use development unlikely. It just wouldn't be a very desirable property to bring into a mixed-use development with that large infrastructure there. In addition to that, just the size and nature of this property on that kind of northern boundary, very narrow property. We just felt like this is actually a good candidate to look at moving from one of those categories, which is that general plan amendment for our downtown urban district up to our commercial district there. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission. They did recommend approval. You probably, if you've read the report, you'll note there was one dissenting vote. That was one of our long-serving commissioners that has strong feelings about amendments to the general plan and just feels like that's something that should be, we should not make those changes lightly and indicated that with their vote, that they just feel like that was not something that should be changed. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions again.
What stops us from going to the next 6 acres? Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, there's no.
So as soon as you approve that, then the next 6 acres or the next, or whatever,
I think it's a good question. There's really no precedent set by these general plan amendments, though. This is something that you have to consider on an individual basis. This is a legislative decision. So just approving one doesn't mean you have to approve another. We've got some good findings, I think, solid findings about why we've recommended approval. We've indicated, as we said, that this is beyond that station area plan half-mile radius. You've got those property constraints. So it's very easy on another property to say those things don't apply, that we're within that half-mile radius on other properties, that they don't have those same development constraints as we've identified. So again, that's just a matter of making those findings.
The zoning below here is currently,
So all that kind of purpley color is, purpley blue is the mixed-use TOD, that's MUTOD, that's our really are transit oriented. It's related to the front runner station. This zoning directly to the west is our RMH, that's the mobile home zone for that one existing mobile home park. There is, again, highway or heavy commercial zoning to the north, actually right across the street also. So it's in an area that we're not leapfrogging or doing any kind of island type of a zone here, cherry pick type zone. This is actually one that just moves the boundary slightly to the south.
Has there been any indication that an increase in sales tax revenue, or if we were to approve something like this?
We don't really look at that. We try to just focus on the land use side of things. It probably could be something we could come up with. We think this is a good decision based on land use alone.
Well, the house that's there, isn't that a business?
It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah, it's,
Well, evidently
It's
not.
now.
yeah.
If it's gone.
So the plans are to take that existing Kia dealership and move that into this south portion here and then create a new dealership here where the Kia dealership is, so.
The automotive body shop to the south, did that go in before TOD was a thing?
Yeah, that's an existing non-conforming use, yeah. We've got several of those in the district, and as they've been phasing out, we've been replacing with conforming uses. So there's a old auto repair place that has left and been, that's been occupied, that's something that does conform to the zone out there.
I'm just thinking along the lines of Dave's comment and then some of the things that have happened in the past where zones have been changed and the response is, oh, that was a previous council. We don't know. That's not something that we can, affect at this point. And even to your response, having a yes on one doesn't constitute a yes on another, which is factual. But when you look at the picture, and clearly some of these folks are going to be doing different things in the future, it just is just something more to think about.
These should always be carefully considered, and we have. And I wanted to say that there's a handful of things with the general plan amendment that you really should look at as a council. One would be that there was an error made. We're not necessarily saying that in this case. The other is that there was either new information or a change that's available. So, in this case, we've got some new information that was not available at the time this was looked at, which is that access way. We have the UDOT requirement to line up those accesses. So had we known that at the time, we may have made a different decision. I think that's what you need to look at is, do we have information now that justifies making a change to the general plan? We would recommend that you do, but this is a justification.
If someone wants to look up the history, would those kind of things be in there?
They're in your staff report as findings.
Right, and so it would be there where they can,
Yeah.
you can say this is why.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And we're committed, just from a staff standpoint, we have a state requirement now to plan for this higher density within this half-mile radius. So we're committed to,
Right.
and that's just below this. We're not looking at any kind. In fact, we've indicated that to the applicant that any further expansion is within that area. We're not going to be looking at any kind of recommendation or approval for those. We've got to be consistent with state law. So
The house that was on there beforehand, so is this a recent purchase from Young?
I know Young's been working on purchases for quite some time in that area.
So it was purchased with the understanding of what the current zoning was?
I'd say that's true.
And I think it used to be an insurance company. So
Yeah,
it's a
it
house,
was
but it
respec,
was,
wasn't
It was kind of
No,
commercial.
Respects is
it
still there.
was
Is it?
Schroeder.
Yeah, I think, as you can see, most of that, because of the nature of that access, most of that parcel will be access. That's the primary purpose for that parcel.
To the point about UDOT, I mean, I guess to kind of Bettina's point about new information, well, that kind of presumes that you're gonna rip down that house to get new information to connect the streets, because the reason why they probably didn't have that as part of the general plan before was there was a house there was some insurance, and there was no discussion about it being connected, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's accurate, that, I mean, at the time, they had an operating business. UDOT does have a very robust change of use program, where if you have a change of use, or if something changes on a property, that they kick in the regulations where that existing business could have operated properly for a long time without any change. But now that we've had a change of use, they're gonna say, yeah, this law now applies.
I think Young's, well, they told us that they get aggressively over the years, tried to acquire many of those properties, including those on the frontage, and have not been successful in doing that. So it's not like they haven't made an effort to create other options. And then I think when they, as you talked about, when they were able to acquire this one on the south end, then they went to start talking about how to develop. That's when this issue with regard to the line yours, which was my recollection or understanding is that was a wrench that got thrown in the works kind of at the end. He had purchased the property. And so that's what's really driven them to come to us. If they'd have been successful, that's their issue, right? So buyers and sellers market, they would have put that, they would have had options, but in this game they don't. Because they have to have obviously second access.
And they do own, I'm sorry,
No,
they do own some of these intervening properties in the front, but they don't own all of them. So UDOT would require either alignment with that street or a certain amount of spacing, and that's the issue, is they can't make that spacing necessarily work with the properties they have. Any other questions I can?
Anything else?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, Joyce. Okay, that's the last item on our work meeting, and we are actually going to get out of here on time and start our regular council meeting at 7 p.m. Okay, if there's nothing else you guys would want to bring up, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
There's no move, I say, let's end it.
I'd like to welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting this evening, July 18th. Our start time is 7 p.m. And as customary, we like to start our meeting out with a prayer and a pledge. And each month we change this, and this month it will be Councilmember Bloxham's turn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to open our serve. We're going to actually not our services here. We'll open our council meeting here, and I'm going to say a prayer, and then we'll stand and offer the pledge. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for our many blessings. We're grateful to meet together as a city body and to be able to discuss the affairs of our great city. We're grateful for all those who live within its boundaries. We're grateful for those who work for the city and dedicate their lives to keeping us safe and to keeping our city running. We ask you to please bless us as we discuss these important topics, that we can be led to the best decision for our residents. And we ask you to please bless us as we continue to try to make our city the best place to live. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Okay. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a beautiful prayer, and I appreciate the ceremony that needs to take place before all of our meetings. So with that, council, we'll go ahead and get our meeting started. We have 3 sets of minutes that was in your packet. So if any of you have any corrections or additions to it, please make it known, or in your motion, you're welcome to make that announcement as well.
Well, I do have one correction for the work meeting minutes for May 2nd. There was a line in there identifying a series of 1-hour films, but it is just a one-hour film. And we did select that 1-hour film, but I did send that correction via email. Okay. So if the exact verbiage in the email can be used, I don't remember it. But if that could be used, I would appreciate that. Okay, is that okay? Can I do that, Clint? Okay. So with that, I can make a motion that we would approve the work meeting minutes for the council budget work meeting on March 20th, the council work meeting May 2nd with the corrections sent via email to our recorder, and the minutes of the city council meeting on May 16th.
Well, second.
And moved in second that we adopt the minutes with the correction for the May 2nd meeting. All those in favor? Well, there's motion and a second, sorry. And so all of those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Very good. Okay, let's go on to our municipal announcements. So council, I know some of you sit on some boards that you want to make those announcements for.
Okay, I'll go again. I do have one announcement for the Layton Communities That Care. We will be hosting a movie screening on August 22nd here at the Kinley. It'll be at 7 p.m. It will be free. The screening is for a film called Screenagers, and it is about the effects of vaping and substance use and abuse in the digital age for our young people. And so we're inviting the entire community, parents, teenagers to come. It will be free. There will be some raffles for gift cards that you can get there. We'll have some snacks and things of that nature. It will begin at 7 p.m. just here in the Kinley Amphitheater. It's a large venue, but we would like you to RSVP if you could, just to make sure we have enough snacks. There's an email address for Megan Hanshaw. It will be MEGANH@dbhutah.org, and this will be posted. There will be flyers all over. And I did hear that if you have any youths that have been carried over, that you can ask at your school, you can ask the counselor if they would be able to clear one of those for you if you attend this event. Thank you.
I love it. And Communities That Cares, I mean, this program is growing, and I appreciate all the effort that Councilmember Smith Edmondson puts into this. So thank you very much. Mr.
Just,
Thomas.
I don't know, this, I don't want this to sound like I'm patting ourselves on the back, because I'm not. Because I don't think we had the involvement that happened on the 4th of July. It was well done. It was, I don't want to say it's one of the best. I don't know. They're all nice. But this one was done. I got a lot of compliments on the police force, which I never got before. And our Voices of Liberty concert, I think ranked up there at the top with any of the ones that have been put on before. They were asked to do things a little different, and it was done. And I think they need to have a, pat on the back, because they listened, they strived, they worked hard to make sure things happen. There was, there's always problems when you bring whatever 20, 30,000 people around. You're going to have issues, but the day went well. The Sunday service went well. I was just pleased. It was just nice to hear good things and not people complaining about something.
Well, and I think to extend on that, the amount of volunteers that obviously helped us, I mean, that's what really pulled it off. So we certainly have a great Parks and Rec team and a commission that plans the event, but in reality, it's the hundreds of volunteers that also step up. So I think that was great. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mayor and Dave, you took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you. Thank you to everyone that, made the Liberty Days happen, and great event. I'll just add a statistic. The council and 100 or so volunteers, I don't know how many we had, passed out 14,000 popsicles and ice cream cones at the parade, and an additional 5,000 to hospitals, assisted living, places around the city. So thanks for everyone's efforts in doing that. It was a, part of a community. It was awesome. So good to see a lot of volunteers that showed up. And then we got another party next week. So the 24th Pioneer Days activities, we've got a lot of fun activities, starting in the morning with the Pioneer Day Jubilee at the museum next door here, food truck rally in the Commons Park, and then the free concert that everyone looks forward to for the last 23, 24 years or so, the Riders in the Sky free concert at the amphitheater here, 7 to 9 p.m. And then the evening will conclude with the Electric Light Parade at 10 p.m., starting at the end of the south end of Wasatch Drive and Gentile Street, and traveling to Layton Commons Park, where we'll have a big party until 11:45 or so, midnight. So the parade route has changed a little bit. We'll go around the Commons, or east,
To the seminary.
farther to the seminary building, and come around into the park on the east entrance instead of near the police department. So also Layton Fest is going on every Friday evening. Lots of food trucks, entertainment. Bring the family out. And tomorrow night, I'm not Arts Council representative, but me and my family will be watching Top Gun Maverick for free in the amphitheater tomorrow evening. So bring the family out. Lots of activities going on in the city.
There is. This is a fun and exciting time of year, and I love to see everybody out and about. And speaking of that, it was a last minute call, but Young's Power Sports on Main Street yesterday unveiled a mural on their wall, and it's kind of an interesting mural, but it ties in with the Davis County tourism. And so with that, they actually have the letters spelled out Layton very large, and the intent is for people to come and take your picture in front of it and show your your love for your city as well as tourism as well. And then you'd have to go inside, but there's several different items in that mural that is kind of like a hide and seek. And one in particular that I have to mention because it's just kind of goes along with our name is, we do have a T in it, but it's, over the years, when you enunciate it, a lot of the locals leave out the T. So intentionally, the artist hid a lowercase t in that mural. So you're supposed to find the lowercase t, knowing that, a lot of the locals enunciate it as Layton. Yeah. So anyway, a lot of fun stuff happening in our city. Okay, anyone else have anything? Okay, with that, let's go ahead and move down to actually our number 4. We do not have any verbal petitions at this time, so let's go on to our citizens' comment. So if there's anyone in the audience that wish to address the council, you're more than welcome to do so. You can come up to the podium, please state your name, and then of course your purpose. And certainly if you're here to discuss any of our items that's in our public hearing, then you can wait until that time to go ahead and address us regarding that particular item. But otherwise, the time's now yours.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, Council, and staff. Appreciate the opportunity to bring back to you again what I did last time about a radar trailer or some type of reminder for speed limit in our area. We had an occasion on the 4th of July that could have been catastrophic. We've continued to have high speeders through the area, but we had an individual that made the curve that I referenced before, 100 east and 1250. You could hear the tires and the acceleration. He was doing between 40 and 50. 4 times he came past us, and we're making hand gestures to him, and we received hand gestures back. And we had kids and families doing fireworks in the street that they had to get out of his way. So I had asked before about the radar trailer be put in as a reminder, and I come back asking if we have to make that in writing or make some type of formal on what can be done for that.
It's available. Okay. I'm going to allow our chief of police to answer that question for us when he gets up, or if you want to address it now, you're more than welcome to.
We're happy to.
Appreciate. Right. We see them around. They've been in the other street on 1150 a couple times. And I don't know how much effect it'll have on this individual or the 3 other ones that are problems, but it'll be first steps. And I have seen a couple of unmarked units in the area and appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead then, council. Let's go down to our consent items tonight. We have 2 of those, and actually our first one up would be presented by our Chief Swanson. And this is in regards to a proposal for an interlocal agreement between Layton City and South Weber City for dispatch services.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Tonight I bring you Resolution 2424, which is about accepting a proposal for an agreement between Layton City and South Weber City for provisions of dispatch services. For background, as you know, Layton City has had ongoing discussions with other Davis County and city administrators, police chiefs, and fire chiefs since early 2021 about countywide provision of dispatch services. And at that time, it was determined that the best design was 2 dispatch centers, one in the north here in Layton and one in the south in Bountiful. Following the consolidation of dispatch services between Clearfield and Layton, as well as North Davis, South Weber inquired whether Layton would have the ability to provide dispatch services before our new building is finished. And after examining the need, it was determined that Layton City did have enough existing space to provide dispatch services for South Weber Fire and EMS. This agreement will benefit both jurisdictions in several ways. It's anticipated that this cost sharing, along with the economies of scale, will provide improved service to both jurisdictions in the form of communication as well as cooperation between the fire departments in both cities. In addition, it prepares the city for future consolidation, which we're planning for. So staff recommends that council adopt resolution 2424, authorizing the mayor to sign the interlocal agreement for the provision of dispatch services to South Weber City. And I'm happy to entertain any questions from council.
Chief, thank you. Maybe just for informational purposes, whenever residents will know that, they call 911 in Layton City boundaries, they're going to get Layton City to come and help them with whatever they need. So when there's an interlocal agreement that's contractually with another city, I think probably their first instinct, I know when we started doing these, my first instinct was, well, I don't want to provide additional service to somebody else's city. I want to focus on our city. So can you just speak maybe to how this is going to not detract from Layton City residents' the ability to have dispatch services at the highest level?
Yes, absolutely. So, we came up with a formula based on what the total budget is to provide dispatch services. So we're not talking about us sending, law enforcement and stuff like that. That's handled through the mutual aid agreements that we already have in place. But these costs are proportional based on call volume and also based on population of the city. So in the case of South Weber, their population as of 2022 of about 8,200 people. And over the last 3 years, they've had an average of 365 calls a year, which boils down to about one a day. And so when you use our formula, that comes up to about $13,000 that they're going to pay us to contract for those very few calls that we'll be handling for them. And the mutual aid already exists, right? So our fire department already goes down there. They come up here and help us on stuff. This will actually just ease the communication part of that. Yeah.
Very good.
So you mentioned the mutual aid agreement. I know that South Weber has their own fire department, but as far as law enforcement, is it through the sheriff's office?
Yes,
Unless it's
yes,
big
Councilman. So South Weber contracts with the sheriff's office currently and have, as long as I've been here, for those law enforcement services. They have approached us about that, but the city is not in the position, nor do we want to be subsidizing other cities or other entities. And so the quote we gave them was for what it would really actually cost to provide those services. And so they've elected to stay, at least for the time being, to stay with the sheriff's office for those costs because they're a lot lower than what we would charge them to do that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Sure. Go ahead.
So we talked about expansion not happening too much in the next 18 months till our new building is built. Is there other room for expansion in the existing building where you're at now, or additional?
Not really with the cities that are left.
Okay.
Because they're a little bigger than the 8,000.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Okay. Is that it?
I think I do have one more question I didn't ask in the work meeting. With their call volume being so low, it is pretty simple or easier for us to absorb what they're doing. When Clearfield came over, we also absorbed some of their staff. Would we need to be doing that as well with South Weber? Do they have like a staff person that would be coming over as well, or are we just only going to be taking that call or those calls?
yeah, with Clearfield, we did hire 9 of their dispatchers to come over because we needed that for the call volume. This is such a low amount that we do not need to add anything additional. So we're basically charging just based on the calls.
Thanks. Very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Speaking of interlocal, Bettina, with Communities That Cares, we work with South Weber quite a bit on that as well. So we really look at them as our neighbors. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to item number B, which is amended plat approval. Oh, yeah, we do need a screen lowered here. So as the screen is coming down, our Community and Economic Director, Chad Wilkinson, will be presenting this item, which is a Layton Industrial Park subdivision, and the approximate address is at 822 North Marshall Way.
I'm going to go ahead, Mayor, if that's okay, with the
Absolutely.
knowledge that the council can see what I'm talking about, and those pictures will come up in just a minute for the general public. But yeah, this is an amendment to the to a subdivision, existing subdivision, Layton Industrial Park subdivision, and this is really a really simple amendment. They've got a lot that's big enough to divide. It meets all of our minimum standards. They would like to divide this for the purpose of creating some additional developable land in the future. So this has been reviewed by our planning commission, and this is being recommended for approval. I'm going to wait for that just to come up just briefly here, and we'll show the pictures very briefly of what's being proposed. But again, this comes to the council just based on our local and state law that whenever we have a subdivision amendment, we come through the council. But all of these are lots that are fairly large in size. The two lots that will be created, we have one that's 1.85 acres in size, the other that's 3.3, approximately almost 3.4 acres. Here's just really quickly the properties. Again, 882 North Marshall Way. We've got the property here shown in red. It's got an existing use on it. The existing use is a precast concrete product use known as confab. They make precast concrete products like plaques, residential subdivision markers, those kind of things. Again, this is the plat here that in front of you on the screen. That lot line, for whatever reason, is not showing up well on the slide, but I'm just going to outline where that new boundary would be. So the existing boundary is right here around the exterior. That new boundary will be right there, and we'll divide that off into a smaller lot and a larger lot. The Planning Commission has reviewed this subdivision amendment request, and it's recommended unanimously that the council approve the subdivision amendment. I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Council, any questions on this one?
Which lot has the existing building on it?
So that's the north of the two lots will be where that existing building is located.
So the larger
lot. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Well,
okay, thanks.
That was pretty simple then. Okay, council, I'll bring it back to you as far as action regarding the consent items, and just so everyone knows, the council can take action on both items at the same time. So with that, I'll look for a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion we adopt resolution 24-24 and the amended plat Layton Industrial Park subdivision number 2 amendment.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Been moved in second that we adopt the consent items as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. That is unanimous. We'll now go on to our public hearing portion of our meeting. And we do have 3 items here, and Mr. Wilkinson will be presenting all 3 of them. So, Chad, I'll let you go ahead and start with item A.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a text amendment application, and the applicant for this particular text amendment is a citizen. Our code does allow for private citizens to request changes to the ordinance, and this is what's occurred here. This is a requested change to our home occupation standards that would allow for 2 high-impact home occupations. I'm going to take just a moment and explain kind of the difference between a high impact and a low impact home occupation. Low impact home occupations are just what you'd expect. These are home occupations that are almost invisible to a neighbor. These would be people like consultants or others that just have maybe a laptop, a small desk, that do consulting work or some other type of work that's very, very low impact. Again, almost invisible to the neighborhood that they're there. High impact home occupations are also allowed in our city. These are home occupations that would include a couple of different categories. One would be home occupations where you have either a client or an employee coming to the site. Our code does allow for 1 non-resident employee as a low impact home occupation, but it allows for some additional non-resident employees as a high impact home occupation. The other subcategory of that is, again, people who would invite people to their home. This might be beauticians, barbers, people that are giving some type of education, lessons, swimming lessons, something like that, where we're actively bringing someone into the home. The second broader category of high impact home occupations, those are things like contractor uses. Those are things where you have storage of materials or equipment on a site that could potentially create impacts on neighborhoods. Back in 2020, the council went through a pretty involved process to change our home occupation standards that allowed for additional home occupations that weren't previously allowed at that time. And one of the things that was discussed at that time is what's the proper amount of impact that would be acceptable in a residential neighborhood. One of the challenges, and I think that this is probably one of those classic zoning issues, is allowing reasonable use of someone's property while not creating unreasonable impacts on neighboring property owners. And that's the balance that we have to try to reach, especially in something like a home occupation. We want to allow someone to have reasonable use of their property, but not create unreasonable impact on their neighbors' right and enjoyment of their property. So with that being said, we went through that process. Again, this is something that went through a lot of discussion at the time. It was decided that to comply or to mitigate any concerns, that it would be appropriate for someone to be able to have two home occupations, one high impact and one low impact. Or potentially two low impact home occupations, but two is the limit. But only one of those could be a high impact home occupation. So that was what the determination was at the time, and that's worked very well for the city. We've had, again, that previous ordinance change really opened the door for many people that weren't able to have home occupations to then have a home occupation, and we've seen a tremendous impact of that in our city. With that, again, the applicant has requested now that we include two high impact home occupations. This was reviewed by our planning commission, and after some good discussion, they have recommended that the council deny this request. And I think probably for two main reasons, and I'll try to outline those briefly. First of all, again, impacts to neighboring property owners was a big concern about that our commission had. The second was that this, and again, this is the expressed concern of the commission, that this is not something that is substantial enough of a change, or that we haven't had enough requests for these, that it really rises to the level of needing to change our ordinance. We've had the ability to work around some of these within our existing ordinance to allow people to have some of these home occupations by storing materials in other locations, for example. And so this just hasn't risen to that level of needing to change an ordinance in order to accommodate a high request of these types of home occupations. So those are those expressed concerns or issues by our planning commission. Again, we have also reviewed this, and we would recommend the council not approve this requested high impact home occupation text amendment for some of the reasons we've talked about. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, do you have any questions on this one?
Just had one, Chad. So there's no, in the ordinance that we currently have, it's not based on the quantity of clients that are coming. It's just the possibility that clients would be coming if they're a high impact.
Of that one subcategory, yes, we have the ability to have some flexibility in that. We try to look at those impacts of those clients coming to the site. In the case of other home occupations, including contractors, we have some very specific standards on what can be stored, what can't be stored there, what types of materials, even down to the weight and size of the vehicles that can be used as part of those.
But there could be a situation where you could have lower, I don't want to use the word impact because that's what the actual thing is, but neighbors would notice in a situation where you may have two low impact businesses that are really actually quite popular, or maybe they have people coming and that they wouldn't notice them. They would notice them even though they're low impact, whereas may have a high impact when you wouldn't notice it because the business isn't doing so hot.
Yeah, anytime there's a client coming to the site, it's a high
Always
impact.
gonna be high impact.
Always high impact.
Okay.
The only situation where it wouldn't be a high impact with someone outside the home is one non-resident employee.
Okay.
That's the only time. Any kind of client, though, is high impact. 1 to 20, or 100, whatever that is.
Okay. Yeah. And previous discussion with prior situations has shown that I think it's a pretty good ordinance in terms of trying to strike a balance between, we obviously want to encourage people to have businesses and make a living for their families, with the understanding that we don't want to transform a neighborhood into a pseudo commercial area. So I appreciate the explanation because, you know, I don't like to be, you know, a voice against people having the ability to make a living for their families. And that's why these types of things are important, I think, to have us discuss, because we want to make sure everyone has a chance to, you know, to put food on the table. But it's just an interesting one, having to balance that dynamic. So I appreciate the effort you put into explaining it in the agenda, because it helped me understand a little better. So thank you.
You bet.
Anyone
May I,
else?
Mayor? Yeah, I echo Councilman Bloxham's sentiment of, because we were here, we helped craft this with you, uh, because I mean, the text or the ordinance before was only family members for a home occupation, and so I think we've struck a really good balance of doing just that, having residents have the ability to have a business in their home at the same time. You don't want the neighborhood to be a business area either. Question though, the low impact businesses, they come to the city and you can approve those. That doesn't have to go to the planning commission, but the high impact ones come each like a conditional use. They come to you and you say, yeah, you got to go in front of the planning commission, or you can get signatures from residents, from
That's right.
neighbors around you.
Yep. They can bypass the planning commission with neighborhood signatures. Yep.
So I guess the question is then, if we decide, no, we let's flesh this out a little bit more, and maybe you could do this where you can have two high impact businesses in a home, that would have to come to the planning commission. I mean, could the planning commission make that determination with how they do with other conditional uses? Like, well, what is the business? Not all high impact businesses are equal. Was that discussed in the planning commission, or have you discussed that as a staff as a possible? Yeah, if the city council says this is what we want to do, now what do we do? Was that one of the possible solutions?
We've definitely considered that. I think, you know, one of the things we look at is trying to create an ordinance that's as fair as we can be and as equally or that we can administer as equally as we possibly can. With there's always nuances to all of these different types of businesses. One of the reasons why we have restrictions on contractor use is that by experience we found that there's just a high likelihood that they'll expand beyond what what is allowed by code even. And so it's trying to strike that balance of allowing that, but having some very strict regulations that say this is what you can and can't do. Our concern on again is, if we were to take each of these to the planning commission, how do we equally administer that to say, well, this person is, they're good, but this other person we don't think is going to be as good, right? And trying to be as fair as we can on that. So we've tried to adopt standards that say this is the standard, this is the box you have to fit in order to do that. And our experience would be that having two of these starts to change the nature of a home, right? We're saying that there's that balance of allowing for reasonable use of the home, but not changing the fundamental purpose of that home, which is a residence, right? We're trying to have an accessory use. So having two of these in staff's recommendation, and again, the planning commission discussion, is that's too much. That we've at that point we've crossed that line between reasonable use of a property and unreasonable impacts on a neighbor. So that's I guess our logic about that is that allowing for that other conditional use. What are the standards that are around that at that point, right? Do we say this one seems like it'll be pretty good, but this one doesn't for this application, right? So I think that's where we're at, is trying to come up with something that can be evenly administered by staff and the planning commission.
Just one other thought. Thank you. What if you just had two next door neighbors, both with high impact businesses? It's concentrated, as if one house had two. How does the planning commission deal with those?
Again, that's where we have those boxes around that we say these are the standards that you can use to have one of these home occupations. Some of that's going to take care of itself with the signature process or a conditional use permit process, where neighbors have a chance to comment on potential impacts. But I think that's actually a good example of, what if you had 8 in a row, right? We're trying to strike that balance of, if we do have 8 of these that happen to locate in the same neighborhood, We want to make sure we have some very strict requirements to make sure we don't get, I mean, if we have, let's say we have 8 houses with that, times 2, now we have 16 of these high impact home occupations in a certain neighborhood. We're trying to, again, strike that balance of what is reasonable without being unreasonable to the neighbors.
Do you have another question?
Well, I guess it just kind of colored what Councilman Moore said about my previously not so well articulated question. Just the idea of it just being high impact, just by definition of being a hair salon or something like that, and maybe the person who does the hair salon takes 2 or 3 clients a month, but it's regulated as if it's an everyday business that is the major breadwinner. And so I guess I'm just kind of curious about an idea of having it, if there are 2, it's not necessarily a no, that it's, you got to go through additional regulation to have us be able to approve it, and maybe it's on a case-by-case basis. Is that difficult, Clint, to formulate an ordinance that's so specific, I guess, to the circumstances? And I guess, does that make, I don't want to give an unrealistic expectation that, you know, it's allowable under these circumstances, and then we don't really outline what those circumstances are. It's just based on what the planning commission says they want to approve or not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's difficult and problematic. So, yeah.
Okay, good questions, council. Anyone else before we open up our public?
Can I speak after the public?
You can speak either time. Do you want to?
I have some thoughts around it, but if there were public comments, I would prefer to wait until after. But I don't know if there will be.
Well, I would say then at this point, it sounds like we're ready to open up our public hearing. So I'd entertain a motion to open the public hearing, and then we'll allow residents to come up and speak on item A as outlined.
I move that we open the public hearing.
Been moved in second. All in favor, aye? Any opposed? Okay, very much. Okay. Thank you. You know the rules.
It's been a long time. My name is Claude Young. I forgot to mention that earlier. In considering this ordinance and the applications of it, I hope you'll keep in mind about the cottage industry. Excuse me, I've got a piece new. But the cottage industry that we have now, with the economy the way it is, everybody's trying to make a dollar to get to the next paycheck. And we have many different things of homemaking, money making within the home. So if you consider that, not make this so restrictive that it would restrict the cottage industry that we have within the city. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Claude. Anyone else wish to speak regarding item number A here? Okay, seeing that there's none, I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for action on item number A.
May I make a comment?
Absolutely.
So this is one that I kind of went back and forth on as well. And I think just understanding the nature of a potential versus, what is happening already or what is even being proposed to happen. And I am happy for the comments from our attorney, just because you have a opportunity to allow folks to do what will help them, in their own individual household. But if we do make the change and we don't make it specific, then it opens the floodgates for all kinds of things. But if we make it too restrictive, then you're always having to go, you may be changing it all the time. You may be having to make, different concessions here and there. And so I can understand the request of the Planning Commission for us to not approve this. I would that the applicant were here, because I do have a couple of questions that will not be answered tonight because of that. And I applaud the Community Economic Development for working with residents. As you mentioned, Chad, in the work meeting and a little bit here, that there are times when you've been able to figure out not a workaround, but a way to still aid, a resident in doing what it is they want to do. So even in the case of a contractor, as you mentioned before, who maybe is going to have their contracting office in the home, and then their materials housed somewhere else, that has been approved. And so I think with the idea that the city is very supportive of folks being able to do, what they would like to do with their property, as long as it's not infringing upon everybody else. I think that there's still probably good faith that if this did not pass and this resident came back and was willing to figure out together with staff a way to allow for the business to go, I feel like staff would still be very open and willing to try and figure that out. So sorry, that was just a long roundabout conversation, but those were the thoughts I had in my head, which is why I didn't want to say them earlier in case the applicant was actually here. So yeah.
Okay. Anybody would like to make a motion?
A comment, then maybe a motion, Mayor.
Okay. Very good.
No, I appreciate what you said, Chad, and I was on the planning commission when we redid these this ordinance 4 years ago or so. I appreciate what you said about balancing, because we look at changing an ordinance like this, we look at the business a lot and that residence, but really I think it's has potential to affect a lot more people than just that business. I also appreciate Mr. Young's comments because owning a small business myself, commercial properties is expensive. Retail properties very tough to get into, especially for a small or beginning business. So trying to find that balance is important to encourage new businesses in our community, but also protect those residents that purchased a home in a residential area. So I believe that the ordinance as we have now protects those residents and also gives opportunities. So with that, I'll make the motion that we deny the proposed amendments to Title 19 zoning. Is that enough, Clint?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved in second that we deny the proposed amendment. This is a public hearing, so I need to do a roll call vote. Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Councilmember Watson?
Yes.
Councilmember Morris?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith Edmondson?
Aye.
And Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous to deny. Before we go on to the next one, I apologize, but it brought up a plug that I probably need to do for small businesses and letting them know that there is a loan fund available through Davis County. So anybody that's in this arena and needs a loan, they don't quite qualify for the commercial or the bank loans, this is a good way to go and help, get your business off the ground. So I just want to make that plug for them. Okay, Chad, go ahead. We'll go ahead and go on to item number B of our public hearing, general plan amendment for moderate income housing. So.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is a fairly straightforward amendment to our general plan. The reason this is a general plan amendment is that the moderate income housing plan is part of our general plan document. These are, as I said, housekeeping items. This results from our annual report requirements. We have an annual report that we submit to the state of Utah Department of Workforce Services as part of the state requirements for our moderate income housing plan. As we've discussed with the DWS staff about some of our reporting requirements, we have observed the need to pull back a little bit from some of the specificity that we had in our last year's plan, so that we are taking dates off and now creating some clarity on things that have to be updated or looked at annually. Instead of having a date on those, we'll have just an annual review. I'm going to just go very quickly to show one example of that on the screen for those who may be watching remotely. So In this case, there was a deadline or a date of throughout a certain year instead of having that certain year there. So we would have to potentially modify this every year. We're going to change that to say report on these applications annually. So this was in consultation with, again, the staff from DWS. There's one other change that we are requesting of the council and suggesting of the council, and that is that we have a requirement right now that has to do with weatherization, or excuse me, a strategy that has to do with weatherization of homes. This is a strategy in our general plan. We have observed in the last 6 or so years since this moderate income housing plan was originally adopted that is something that we've not been involved in, that is something handled by the state agencies. So rather than have that as a strategy in our general plan, we're looking to pull that out and just allow the other agencies that are taking care of that to go ahead and do that. So with that, we are recommending the council approve this change to our moderate income housing plan as an element of our general plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay, council, time's yours.
No.
0 questions? Okay, being that there's no questions right now from the council, we'll go ahead and open it up for our public to make any comments or regarding item number B on our public hearing. Okay, seeing that there's no comments, I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council then. Council, would need to take action regarding the general plan amendment for the moderate income housing plan addendum?
Mayor, if I could make one more just statement just before that vote.
Sure.
This is part of our reporting requirement. We will be bringing back our annual housing report to you in the next several weeks. Well, this is currently, some of these items are currently being reviewed by DWS staff. They've been kind enough to do a pre-review, so that'll be reviewed by them to make sure that we're in line with what they're looking for, and then we'll bring that to you at a future meeting.
Very good.
With that, Chad, I do have one question. So is there a possibility that some of these items that we are opposed to perhaps approve tonight will have to come back and be changed, or has nothing to do with these changes here?
These changes are facilitating that report, and this has been worked on closely with DWS already. The other items are actually related to the actual reporting on those items, right? So these are just saying, these are the goals and strategies. What we'll give to you in a few weeks will be, this is what's happened in relation to those goals and strategies. Yep.
Thank you. With that, I move that we adopt ordinance 24-23, which is the general plan amendment for the moderate income housing plan addendum.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt ordinance 24-23. Once again, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Thomas?
Yep.
I guess that's a yes. Okay. Councilmember Smith Edmondson?
Aye.
Councilmember Morris?
Aye.
Councilmember Bloxham?
Yes.
And Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. That ordinance passed unanimously. We'll now go on to item number C, which again is a general plan amendment and a rezone request.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This next application is in conjunction with, as was said, a rezone. This is a general plan map amendment that we're talking about. This is the property shown there, 282 North Main. It's a smaller property. It's about 0.65 acres. This is the current zoning for that property. You can see the property outlined in that red crosshatched little theme there. I want to mention that, as I did in the pre-meeting, that when we make these zone changes, we also change those adjacent right-of-ways, so that would cover those areas before and behind the property there along Main Street. You can see some of the existing uses there adjacent to the site. You've got some existing commercial there to the north and south. You've got existing mobile home park there to the west, and then, of course, I-15 to the east. I guess the crux of this question is really about this general plan amendment. We take these requests very, very seriously. This is something that needs to be carefully considered when we look at a general plan amendment, whether or not this is appropriate or not. The general plan was, as we've said many times, was a highly participated in process by the public, and so we take that very seriously. We want to make sure we're careful. As we look at this particular property, there are some characteristics about it that really lend to the potential general plan amendment that's being proposed. First one I want to just point out is this is really being driven by a request by the Utah Department of Transportation to align some access points. You can see an access point to the west along Main Street. UDOT has requested and will be requiring that access to this potential development line up with that access point across the street to the west. So we looked at that very carefully. That it does constitute some new information that wasn't available at the time the general plan was adopted. As was mentioned in our Brook meeting, this home that you see there on the screen existed at the time the general plan amendment was, or general plan was adopted, doesn't now, and opens up some additional opportunity for development on the property that wasn't contemplated before. You'll recall that in the last couple of years, the state legislature has adopted requirements for a station area plan that surrounds our front runner station. It's around fixed guideway railways. This is an area that is within proximity to that, but this, interestingly enough, this property is just outside the state mandated planning area for a station area plan. So it's just outside of that half-mile radius that would be required by the state. And as we looked at that, we felt that again was another good justification to relook at the general plan designation, since that is outside of that area that's planned for mixed use. Last thing I'll say is, in terms of findings, this is a unique property. We've talked about this in the work session, but there are some constraints with the property. If you look on your screen, there's a existing cell tower with no intention of going away anytime soon that would really make it difficult to consolidate this property with properties to the south for some type of a mixed-use development. The property by itself, 0.65 acres, is not really large enough for a viable mixed-use type of a development. We'd want to have to consolidate that with another property to the south and east in order for that to happen. So that's another area that lends itself to looking very closely at whether that it would be a viable mixed-use development, or whether or not we should consider changing our general plan to allow for that to be within the adjacent designation. Just real quick, one more thing on the map, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. This is not one of those island or spot zones. This is immediately adjacent to the designation that they look to propose, which is that CH designation, which allows for automobile dealerships. This is in conjunction with a request for an expansion of some of the automobile dealership uses there along Main Street. And so that is, again, an appropriate extension of an existing zone that's immediately adjacent to the property. This did go to the Planning Commission. It was recommended for approval. And we did have, again, one dissenting vote from one of our longtime planning commissioners related to just concerns about what we talked about, that it's important that we carefully consider these general plan amendments, and just the concern about making sure that we're being consistent with those. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. We are recommending that the council, along with the Planning Commission, that we're recommending the council approve ordinances 2419 and 2420. This is a 2 ordinance action. One of those would be covering the general plan amendment, and the other, the zone change. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, council? I know you were very good about asking a lot of questions in the work meeting, which is the purpose of the work meeting, so we can kind of, make sure we make the right decisions here. So none of you have any additional questions, and certainly you can ask them after the public hearing, but if not, I'll go ahead and open it up for our public if anyone wishes to make a comment regarding item number C on our public hearing. Okay, seeing that there's no comment, I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for questions, discussion, or action.
I just want to bring up one of the questions that we brought up in the work meeting, which was, as Chad has mentioned already, that we don't want to make general plan amendments lightly, willy-nilly, pick your word. We want to be thoughtful and methodical about them, because obviously the general plan, there's been a lot of thought put into that. The question that was posed was if making this change would then prompt or encourage or preclude us from saying no to other changes in adjacent space. And Chad did answer that question in the back, which he mentioned here, because of the proximity to public transit, that really there's not necessarily a compelling reason to make changes, to continue making further changes in that same area. That question was poignant for me because of some other general plan amendment requests that had taken place in the past in similar areas where, one particular corner had a general plan amendment, another corner did not. And, just having those instances where you almost feel like you don't have a really good reason to say no, if that, makes sense. But I do appreciate, Chad, I appreciate you for responding to our questions and giving the reasonings behind why something is appropriate versus why it's not appropriate. And that helped me understand a little bit better about why it would be okay versus why it would not. So I appreciate your patience with me, I'll say. I was not on the planning commission, so I did not have that background as some others who have been. And so I appreciate your time with me.
Just had a few questions, Chad, and maybe the applicants can help. How long's this property been owned by the applicant?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
And the reason I ask is to Councilmember Smith Edmondson's point, some of the requests for general plan amendments that we've had in the past, there's been I don't know if it's a presumption that these general plan amendments just will buy the property, will request the city to do a general plan amendment, things will be just fine. It puts some pressure on us because then they can say, well, we purchased this property, we really want to do what we want to do with it, and if you don't allow us to do this general plan amendment, then we're not going to be able to do what we want to do. And the response that we have had in the past is you purchase the property with the existing zoning. So if you purchase the property with the existing zoning, then I want to know that you weren't just presuming that the legislative body was going to just approve whatever the developer wanted. Is that something that you think could be an issue for us moving forward if we were to approve a general plan amendment?
I think it's certainly something that someone looking to purchase a property should be looking at what's the existing general plan, what's the existing zoning. Those types of issues are certainly important. I think in this case, and the applicant is here, applicant's representative, so if they want to speak to this as well, I think in this case what's been happening is there's been some methodical acquisition of properties in order to do what we see as a very good expansion of existing Layton business, and they've run into some roadblocks with some of those properties of being able to acquire some properties that would allow them to meet access spacing requirements from UDOT. This was a solution that they saw as a way to align those access points the way UDOT would like. So I don't know if there was any kind of expectation that this is a guaranteed lock. They've come to us and requested this, and we've of course always let them know this is a legislative decision by the council, and that this has to be approved before we can go forward with anything. But in this case, I think again, one thing to keep in mind is that these really don't set precedents. I know it feels like that they do, but there really is no precedent being set by a legislative decision. You're making a decision based on findings of fact that you come up with. In this case, we really do feel like there are findings that support this particular request. And even to the extent of with that access issue and the existing constraints, that maybe this is one worth another look, right? And sometimes that happens with the general plan. General plans are, as much we'd like to look at parcel by parcel basis, we don't always have a chance to do that on every single parcel. So sometimes it is good to laser focus on what, in reality, this parcel, what's the best thing for this parcel? Is it really best suited for mixed use? And I think in this particular case, because of those constraints, the cell tower, the narrowness, without it being combined with some other parcel, it's not really that viable. And it's really, I think we were pretty generous with our designation going up into the north on Main Street. In reality, half a mile, that's the kind of industry standard for how far a person is willing to walk to get to these transit stations, and that's even on the long side of that. Some cities and municipalities use a quarter mile because it's just realistic that that's that's 1,300 and something feet. That's a fairly good distance to walk. So half mile is on that edge of where we'd say, is this really a viable property? And I think, like I said, it was probably, we probably went a little bit far on extending that to the north, looking back at that. And I think that's something we need to consider. I don't know if it was necessarily a mistake, but I think it is something that, looking back,
maybe we could have pulled that back based on that half-mile measurement.
Okay. I mean, we had some discussion in the work meeting about the UDOT requirement to connect the streets. But independent of that, they would have still required a general plan amendment to put a car dealership on this piece of property, right?
That's right, yeah. Yep.
Okay, any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, council, then I'll bring it back to you for action. When you make this motion, if you could include the fact that we'll close our public hearing at this time, because this is our last item on our public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance 2419 and ordinance 2420, general plan amendment and rezone request from mixed-use transit-oriented development to planned highway commercial, and close the public hearing.
Very good. Second. Okay, it's been moved in second. So with that, again, I'll do a roll call vote, and I'll go ahead and start with you, Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Okay. Councilmember Smith Edmondson.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Bloxham.
Yes.
And Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous that we adopt ordinance 2419 and 24-20. That is the last item on our agenda item at this time. So, and council, unless you have any other unfinished business. Okay, Councilman Roberts.
Yeah, Mayor, sorry, been thinking about this, and we've had some pretty traumatic fires the last couple of weeks here in Layton City, and I just wanted to offer thanks to our fire department, our police, Public Works, played a key role in preventing one of the big fires in our city from being a really big tragedy. So we're sorry for the fires. We're sad, I guess, for the fires and how it's affected our residents, but just can't say enough thanks to our fire department for their quick response, police for their help, and Public Works. So thank you, Mayor.
Excellent. I'm glad you remembered that. That's very good. Okay, anyone else? If not, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Oh, okay. Is there a second? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending our Layton City Council meeting this evening, and we hope to see you on the 24th for all the festivities.